Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Tuesday evening. I think it's a little bit of a chillier evening tonight than we are used to, especially down here in the southern part of KZN, where I've been at least walking around short-sleeved all day today, which has been great, but it looks like the cold front is finally hitting us. So we've been covering energy, and I think right now we probably all need a little bit of energy. It's mid-year, it's almost midwinter, and I see a lot of people around me starting to flag as far as energy levels are concerned, and they're getting tired, and they're just losing, or their batteries are starting to take a bit of strain. And yeah, as we can see, even Eskom is taking a bit of strain at the moment as well. So maybe they need to have some of our extra bits and pieces that we supply. So we've been going through cellular energy, and we've covered the cells, and just recently we've covered the basic things like lipids and fats and vitamins and proteins and minerals. So tonight we're going to get into the minerals, because we've been doing, last week we did the vitamins, and prior to that we've done the protein, the fats, and the carbohydrates. So I'm going to share my screen over here, if I can find my share screen. There we go. And just add all these bits and pieces. Okay. So as I said, we've been covering cells and cellular energy. What? How do they work? If you want to see what the previous discussions were, please go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, so that every time I upload, you will get a notification that I have uploaded, and you're welcome to watch and rewatch and share all of the presentations that I do. So this week, we are going to be covering minerals. Minerals are simple substances that are found in the environment that are essential to the body's functioning. Now, minerals are things like calcium and magnesium and iron. Out in nature, you'll look at things like your sand, etc. Those are minerals. Now, minerals are used to regulate a wide range of body processes, from bone formation to blood clotting, and they are important for the body structure. We all know about vitamins and what they do and don't do, and most people are aware of vitamins and vitamin supplements, but not too many people, in my opinion, know about minerals and how important they are. I think most people, if you mention minerals, will say, yes, it's calcium, but they don't really know about all the other minerals. Now, most minerals are either quickly used or lost in waste products. Therefore, we must eat mineral-rich foods daily to replenish our supply. Iron, however, is an exception, because it tends to be kept and recycled by the body, except when there is blood loss. Now, I've been noticing a lot just recently that a lot of people are complaining about being anemic. In fact, there was a blood drive at our local hospital today, and a lot of people weren't donating because they are anemic and very low in iron. So their blood wasn't being accepted. So one's got to be careful, and this is one of the big things that people are missing a lot of, is iron, partly because they're not eating enough meat, and that is a good source of iron. Things like beans is also a good source as far as I know, and spinach, but I know in my household, not too many people eat a lot of spinach around here. Now, minerals are divided into two sections. You get major minerals and you get minor minerals. Now, the major minerals are the calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, potassium, sulfur, sodium, and chlorine. Now, just an aside over here, minerals in general are not easily absorbed. And because of today's farming methods, the commercial farming, in a lot of cases, the soil is being depleted of these minerals. They're getting an overload of some in the different types of synthetic fertilizers that are being used, but a lot of the more trace element type of minerals are no longer in the soil, or not in anywhere close to the amount that they should be. And this is part of the reason why we are starting to see a decrease in the amount of minerals that people have got in their bodies these days. So we won't get into all the technical bits and pieces about the chemical signs and structures and everything, but know that calcium's chemical symbol is Ca. And calcium keeps the nervous system working well and is needed for blood clotting. Osteoporosis is the disease caused by calcium deficiency. And I think most people are aware of osteoporosis, and it happens a lot specifically in ladies, and more specifically in those who have had numerous children. Because remember that those little people are sucking a lot of nutrients out of mom. And if mom is not keeping up as far as diet is concerned or supplementation is concerned, mom is losing out big time, because that little person needs to develop a skeleton. Now, where are they going to get the building blocks, which is calcium, for their skeleton? If it's not coming from mom's diet, it's coming from mom. And that's where the problem comes in. And I did a talk a while back on bone and skeleton, etc. And there we learned that your bone density starts decreasing from about the age of 25, give or take. Sadly, I think it's starting to decrease a lot younger these days, because people are tending to stay away from dairy. They're drinking a lot of soda drinks, which leaches the calcium out of the bone. And all of these things leads towards osteoporosis. And it's more commonly seen in older people, where you hear about Mrs. Jones, who had an accident and she fell and she fractured her hip, and she's in her late 60s, early 70s. Whereas sadly, in a lot of cases, she fractured her hip, then fell. Now, as you know, I work in the orthopedic business, so I'm dealing with bones, etc., on a regular basis. And what I have noticed for me is quite scary. I'm seeing a lot more younger children breaking bones. If they're playing soccer or rugby and they have a collision, or they've been involved in a car accident, or they've fallen out of a tree from a height, I can understand it. But a lot of these children are running around at school and a friend pushes them over and they break an arm. Now, children are quite low to the ground, so it's not a far fall and it's not a big fall, yet they are breaking bones very, very easily. And that, to me, is quite concerning. And I think in a lot of cases, we'll see that you look at their diet is quite low in calcium. Now, I have a niece who is allergic to dairy and therefore is not getting sufficient calcium in her system and has broken bones on numerous occasions. If she takes her calcium supplements, she's fine. If she doesn't take much for her to break a bone. The next thing that we see is sodium. Now, sodium is salt. Now, sodium and potassium help to regulate the passage of fluids in and out of cells. Too much sodium in the diet may aggravate high blood pressure, or otherwise known as hypertension, which increases the risk of heart attacks, stroke, or kidney disease. And again, I'm seeing a lot of these days. Table salt is one source of sodium in the diet. Most sodium comes in food. Now, again, one's got to be careful, and if you're eating processed foods, please check the label, because that is where we find a lot of hidden salts, which is your sodium, and hidden sugars. But it's the sodium that is the problem, because in virtually all processed foods, you're going to find quite high doses of sodium, or salt, comes under different names, as well as quite high doses of sugar. And then people come along and they add more salt to their food. And that is where the problems start to develop. The other symbol that we've got over here is potassium, or K. Now, a deficiency of potassium can lead to muscle weakness and an abnormal heartbeat. And potassium is needed specifically in people like runners, athletes. You'll often find these guys when they're doing Comrades Marathon, for instance, they collapse along the way, or they collapse at the end, and their potassium levels are extremely low. And we've seen other cases where when the potassium levels drop dramatically, you end up with problems with a capital P. Now, your minor minerals, or your trace minerals, are things like iron, iodine, manganese, zinc, copper, and fluorine. Sounds almost like we could open a mine in our body. Most of the minerals needed for the body to function are only required in very small or trace amounts. And this is part of the reason why most of our supplements, or in fact all of our supplements, are made from whole food, because that way we can have the main ingredient as well as all of the trace ingredients, because it's not just trace minerals. Whereas in a synthetic, they take an iron, or they take a zinc, or they take a calcium, but they forget about all the other bits and pieces. They forget about the trace minerals and the trace vitamins that need to be there as well. And that is why I feel our products work so effectively, is because everything is there as it would be in your food, and your body, being the very clever machine that it is, can utilize and use as much or as little of the trace and the main minerals and vitamins that it needs when it needs it. Now, iron is a vital part of hemoglobin, which is a substance in red blood cells that carries oxygen to all parts of the body. Insufficient iron may cause anemia, which is a disease in which the body has either too few red blood cells, or otherwise known as too little hemoglobin. As a result, too little oxygen is carried to the cells of the body. And we all know it happens, we don't get sufficient oxygen. I don't know if you know, but you can also have too much oxygen, but if you don't get enough, you've got a problem. And iodine is needed for the thyroid gland, which is this little guy over here in your throat, to function properly. The thyroid gland produces hormones that control how quickly chemical reactions occur in our body. Too little iodine, and your thyroid gland is enlarged, and you have these, what they call a goiter. And the primary sources are seafood, iodized table salt. Now, in a lot of cases, your finely ground table salt has had iodine added. If you have coarse salt that comes directly from the sea, that iodine is already in it. So they don't really need to add any extra iodine. Now, the next thing, as we've just seen recently, water is vitally important for many more than just one reason. And it's come to really become seen how desperately we need water since the floods recently, when we haven't had water in the house, or more importantly, we haven't had clean water in the house. So we need water, not just for the outside of the body, not just to satiate your thirst, but for a lot of other functions. Because water is found in every cell in the spaces around the cells and in the fluid tissues of the body and in body cavities. If you have too much water, you swell up. If you have too little water, you dehydrate. Now, water carries dissolved nutrients throughout our body and assists in all its functions, such as digesting foods, removing wastes, regulating temperature, and cushioning sensitive parts of our bodies. And part of that is your joints. So anywhere where there's cartilage, more specifically your knees and your spine, if you are dehydrated and you're not getting sufficient water, you are going to end up with problems in these areas, and you're going to end up with pain in these areas. I see this fairly regularly, and when I question the person, how much water are you drinking? In most cases, they will sort of look at me shyly and say, I don't drink enough water. If you're drinking sufficient water, you will have a well-regulated body. If not, your body is going to take strain and you are going to feel it. Maybe not immediately, but at some stage you will feel it. Now, each day we lose 2 to 2.5 liters of water. Now, there's a scary thought. And if this water is not replaced, the body can dehydrate. Now, where and how do we lose this water? Water is being lost through evaporation. Every time that we speak, we are losing water. You see it especially in the colder areas. You go out in the morning and you go, and you breathe out, and you can see the vapor in the air. That is what's happening even when you can't see it. That vapor is going out of our body. That is water. So when we're breathing, we are losing water. Obviously, when we go to the bathroom, we are losing water. When you get hot and you perspire, you are losing water. All of those little drops add up to between 2 and 2.5 liters of water, which is why they will tell you that you're needing to take in about 2 liters of water a day, because you've got to replace what you're losing. Otherwise, there is an imbalance, and nature does not like an imbalance. Now, when minerals are dissolved, they break apart into ions. Not iron as in metal, but in ions as in electrons, basically. The ions formed in body fluids are called electrolytes. And these ions play a central role in water balance in the body. Because when you dehydrate, this balance is off balance. And as we know, nature does not like anything out of balance. Right, so now we've covered all the other bits and pieces. And we also have gone through the foods and things that we generally will find these minerals and vitamins and carbohydrates, etc. in. But what happens if your diet is not optimum? Like about 98% of the entire world's population. In fact, that statistic might even be more so these days, not just 98%. So if you are not getting a balanced diet, and if you speak to your doctor, specifically your old school doctor, they will tell you, you can get everything you need from a balanced diet, which is correct. What they don't ask you is, are you getting everything from your diet? And if you're not, you need to supplement. And we've gone through everything before, between what the differences are between supplements, synthetics and isolates, etc. So we are obviously on this particular talk deal with one specific brand of supplement, and that is Neolife. And we deal with it because, as I've stated on more than one occasion, Neolife is a whole food supplement, not just a vitamin or mineral. It is food in a tablet or supplement form. Therefore, we get exactly as they state, based in nature, backed by science. So it's natural food converted through science into usable, effective nutritional supplements. So what do they recommend for those who are lacking the nutrients in their food? Remember again, a supplement is exactly that, in conjunction to. So obviously, a good, healthy, balanced diet is key. It's if you are not getting the balanced part of that diet that you need to supplement. So the first thing is our very own, very unique product called treonine, which is the grain concentrates. Now, cell membranes need lipids and sterols to stay healthy. We've gone through this on numerous occasions, because if your cell membrane is not healthy, you are also probably not healthy, because you are not going to be able to absorb the nutrients, utilize what you need, and process out the waste products. There will be a fall down somewhere in that little cycle. Unfortunately, grain processing strips the lipids, the sterols, and the other vital nutrients from the foods that make up our dietary staples. We all get told, you need more whole grains in your system. But we also get told, stay away from gluten because gluten is bad for you. Well, technically it's not. Gluten was developed in nature, so gluten has its uses. The problem comes because of today's diet, our bodies cannot always process that gluten because we're lacking some of the essential things that we need, or the essential enzymes that we need to process the gluten. Gluten itself isn't bad. And for a product to be called whole grain, you go to a restaurant, and you go to a good restaurant, they'll offer you choices of bread. We were at one the other day at the airport, and they offered white bread, whole wheat bread, or rye bread. Now, for bread to be marketed as whole wheat, under correction, but I think needs to have a minimum of 30% whole grains. And those whole grains are generally made up of only a single grain, namely wheat. It is not wheat and soy and bran. Now, treonine helps to assure good nutrition at the cellular level by providing a unique and exclusive blend of whole food extracts from wheat germ, rice bran, and soybeans. So they take the oil specifically from the healthy parts. When we talk about wheat germ, think about a maize kernel or a mealie kernel. You've got the yellow starchy bit, and then there's that little white bit in the middle called germ. Now, wheat has a similar sort of thing. Now, humans are very, very clever, and they eat the yellow part of the mealie, and they usually ditch the white germ part. Animals, however, are brighter than humans because they ditch the yellow starch part and they eat the white germ part, because that is where all the nutrients are. From that perspective, I think a lot of animals are brighter than us humans. So Neolife have taken the wheat germ, the healthy part, they've stripped away the outer part, because that's the part that contains the gluten that can cause allergies. They use the rice bran, which is the rough bit on the outside that gets polished off the rice that we eat, because we get the white starchy bit again, and they ditch the bran. Fortunately, Neolife picks up that bran and they use that to create treonine. And the soybeans they use in the whole form, but it's the way that they process it. And remember, our products are non-GMO. This was developed and introduced by Neolife way back in 1958. Treonine was the world's first phytonutrient supplement. And to date, as far as I know, still the only phytonutrient supplement. It provides the phytolipids, meaning fats, that are essential to optimal health and cellular function, including omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids and phytosterols, including the beta-cytosterol, the gamma-oryzanol, stigmasterol, and campesterol, plus the octocosonol. Please don't stress about the fancy terminology over here. That our SAB members can worry about. We don't have to worry about that. We just have to know that it's got all the good stuff in it. Now, why grain concentrates? As grain processing strips away the nutrient-dense and nutrient-diverse outer layers, the foods that make up our dietary staples, namely white flour and white rice, often lack the meaningful amounts of nutrients that are important for cell function, namely the lipids and sterols, which is your fats. Soybeans, wheat, and rice provide key lipids and sterols that are important for cellular health. And they've used these three particular grains because these are the three basic staples. One or all three will be found in every part of our planet. Somewhere they are using regularly one or a combination of all three of these grains. So why our particular grain concentrates? Because they contain a diverse phytonutrient extract, which supplies the essential nutrients that the cells need to be their healthy best. It supports efficient nutrient utilization, supports overall cardiovascular growth and development. It's cold pressed and cold processed to preserve the nutritional value, because as soon as you start heating these things up, they're losing their nutritional value. There's no cholesterol. It is a complete, you've got the complete lipids and sterols from wheat germ, rice bran, and soybeans. It includes all these big fancy names, so I'm not going to go through again. And it's put together in a soft gelatin capsule with plant-based chlorophyll color. And it contains vitamin E for antioxidant protection of those phytonutrients. And to increase their shelf life, grains are subjected to about 24 processes before they are transformed into dietary staples, such as white flour and white rice. The processing removes all the nutritious outer layers of the grain. So we're left with the junk, the part that makes us feel full, but doesn't actually provide any food to our system. And these layers contain the majority of grains, vitamins and minerals, as well as good fats called the lipids and sterols. And we always hear about in the Bible, they talk about the bread of life. And people could live on bread and water back in those days. That's because back then, the bread that they had then didn't even come close to what we call bread these days. Bread then was highly nutritious. These days, nah. Other foods, notably soybeans, provide healthful lipids and sterols as well. And in the 1950s, a series of studies conducted at a Southern Californian hospital indicated that people suffering from chronic fatigue could benefit dramatically from a mixture of plant extracts providing broad-spectrum lipids and sterols. And we're seeing a lot of this again now, or still. Now, over 6 decades later, that mixture, Neolife's TreaNN, is still helping people worldwide. It forms the base into which vitamins and related food factors, minerals, enzymes, and protein have been added to create Neolife's multi-factor food supplement, namely Formula 4. The world's first phytonutrient supplement provides plant lipids and sterols which food processing is stripped from the staple foods that form the foundation of our daily diets. It is named from the Greek 3-in-1 and is a unique combination of concentrated extracts from whole wheat berry, rice bran, and soybeans. It's more than just wheat germ or soy oil. It contains everything naturally available from the lipid portion of the plants. And we all know this little picture over here. I'm going to be moving myself a little bit because I'm running out of time. Lipids and sterols, which are the building blocks for every cell membrane in the human body. And when it comes to health, not all fats are bad. Some fats are good, even essential. And fats provide energy, essential fatty acids, and cellular building blocks, and they have regulatory functions. For instance, fats are necessary for normal growth and development. They are also important to the structure and function of the nervous system. But most importantly, they make up the greater part of the membranes that surround every cell in the human body. Now, healthful lipids and sterols from wheat, rice, and soybeans are good fats. Certain lipids, including the omega-6 and omega-3, may increase the fluidity or pliability of the cell membranes and help to keep the cells functioning normally. And plant sterols may have a number of beneficial effects and may support the proper functioning of the cardiovascular system. Both lipids and sterols are located in the bran and outer layers, which are removed during the grain processing. And this is available for anybody who wants to know. I can share with you the story of wheat and the story of rice and the story of soy. It is available in our literature. And what happens if you don't have a good balance of good and bad fats? With consumer preferences shifting to low-fat and fat-free foods, people are eating less fat than in recent years, although the fat content of the Western diet is still far from the 30% recommended by health experts. While reducing the fat content of the diet has many positive health consequences, it means that people are reducing the total lipids and sterols they are taking in from all sources, not just the bad fats, such as saturated fats. They're also reducing the intake of good fats from whole grains and soybeans, which supply important lipid and sterol nutrients you need to feel your best. In the quest to reduce the fat content of the diet, fat substitutes or fake fats have begun to make their way into the marketplace. Now, while these substances may make some foods less fatty and lower in kilojoules, they do absolutely nothing to meet the body's hunger for good nutrition. Whole food lipids and sterols from wheat, rice, and soy will be especially important for the growing group of people who use fat substitutes to reduce the fat content of their diets. The decrease in total fat consumption is only part of the reason the modern diet features an imbalance of good and bad fats. The other part of the story is that the foods that make up the human diet have changed dramatically in the last 50 years. As artificial fats have increasingly displaced natural fats in the food we eat, the lipid and sterol profile of the diet has changed. And while our hunter-gatherer ancestors consumed a diversity of natural fats, mostly from locally gleaned plants, this diversity decreased when people became successful at growing agricultural crops, which could be sold at the local farmers market. This eroding nutrient diversity was compounded by a decrease in nutrient density when people discovered that grains could be stored longer without going rancid if their lipid and sterol-rich outer coatings were removed. And after World War II, the world got its first taste of margarine and other artificially hydrogenated oils, and the global kitchen has never been the same since. This relatively rapid displacement of natural fats with artificial fats in all foods, all types of foods, has created an unhealthy imbalance of good versus bad fats and has diminished the amount and variety of healthful lipids and sterols in the diet. This imbalance has consequences. Insufficiency of lipids and sterols may cause alterations of the cell membrane, which leads to reduced cellular efficiency throughout the body. It may also affect the ability of the cell's metabolic machinery to produce energy. The lipid-sterol insufficiency may also slow the normal workings of the endocrine glands, which virtually control the body's energy levels. For these reasons, insufficiency of lipids and sterols may be a factor in long-term fatigue. I think I'm going to stop that now, and we'll just recap on this next week, because I'm running out of time, and I'd really like to give you the option of questions, but I don't think I'm going to have that time, unfortunately. So if you've got questions, please keep them for next week, and I will make time for those questions next week, because we're about to bomb out now. So thanks everybody for joining us, and I will send out this recording as soon as I can. Apologies for the rushed ending.
Thanks, Sean.